story tonight, the school threat crisis out of control.
Multiple schools closed today. Just take a look at the list. More than 20 schools shutting down all over Metro Detroit this morning, all of them getting some sort of threat of violence.
And in the city of Detroit alone, the chief saying his department received 23 threats in 24 hours' time. Tonight, police and school leaders are desperately looking for answers to try and put an end to the threats and the fear.
Our big story coverage begins with 7 Action News reporter Simon Shaquette. He's live in Detroit, and Simon, the chief, is saying this has to stop.
Yeah, and the charges could range from terrorism to making threats online. Basically, he says one bad decision with a cell phone could get you as much as 20 years behind bars.
Just in the last 24 hours, we have received 23 threats. 23. So it's going to end.
Detroit Police Chief James Craig issuing a promise to track down and arrest anyone threatening a school. He says 3 juveniles and 1 adult have already been arrested for numerous threats, and more people will soon be in custody.
We have the technology, we have the wherewithal, the commitment to identify you, and we are doing that.
When one of these threats comes in, everything stops, and we go and we try and find out what the threat is based on, whether that is a viable threat. A tremendous amount of resources are spent to keep our children safe.
Since February 14th, Detroit police have investigated 40 school threats, 34 involving shootings, 2 involving bombings, and 4 for both. Today, more than 20 schools in Metro Detroit closed down for the day as a result of these types of threats.
A 17-year-old gets arrested, he's an adult, she's an adult. That's 20 years. That's no prom, that's no Mr. or Mrs. Right, that's no kids.
At this elementary and middle school, John R. King Academy, class was already in session when a bomb squad came out to check on a suspicious package. Kids eventually able to go home for the day after having to shelter in place before it was determined to be safe.
It can't happen. It shouldn't happen. And so we need that activity to stop.
Now, the parents are also being held accountable. Anyone found covering up for their kid could also be charged. Glenda, Dave?
All right, Simon, thank you so much for that update. Chief serious tonight on this one.
Well, and for good reason, right? Our team coverage continues now with 7 Action News reporter Kim Russell. She is with the plan that Macomb County leaders have to stop threats there. Kim?
Yes, this is a very disturbing situation. The Educators School Safety Network actually found that here in Michigan, we have a particular problem. In the 2 weeks that followed the tragedy in Florida, we had the 5th most school threats in the nation. Police and school leaders say something needs to be done.
Every single student who makes a threat will be discovered and prosecuted. Every single one who has made a threat so far has been found and prosecuted.
Macomb County Prosecutor Eric Smith said last year 17 students in Macomb County faced felony charges for threatening schools. Since the tragedy in Florida on Valentine's Day, 40 have been charged. Taking a look at just a couple recent cases, one student is charged with making a terrorist threat after allegedly sharing a video threatening Utica High on social media. Another student from Eisenhower High in Shelby Township was charged after allegedly making comments to a classmate.
Parents, I urge you to talk to your children about the appropriate uses of social media.
Sterling Heights Police, Utica, and Warren school leaders and the prosecutor announced changes they are making to take on these threats. Sterling Heights Police will hire 2 new school resource officers to work in Henry Ford and Utica High schools. Plus, the school districts are setting up their surveillance systems, so in an emergency, first responders countywide will have access to live cameras and know best how to respond.
Parents and kids and cops were all saying enough's enough. Now the next question is, how do you stop it?
This comes after a study by the Educators School Safety Network found Michigan ranked 5th when it came to threats against schools in recent weeks. 7 Action News spoke to one researcher.
Draws more attention to that fact. Our educators need support in the area of school safety every day.
The dramatic underfunding of schools in the last 10 to 20 years has dramatically forced us to look at resources.
And the fact of the matter is that there have been, cuts to counselors. There have been cuts to school psychologists. And I mean, I would say, let's arm our teachers with the necessary resources they need.
Now, while we hate to see this increase in the number of threats against our schools, police And school leaders are asking parents and students to remain vigilant and report anything suspicious so they can continue to investigate any potential threats. Reporting live in Sterling Heights, Kim Russell, 7 Action News.
Kim, thanks for the live report there. Michigan's top law enforcement and education leaders are calling on the legislature for more funding to better protect our state's students. The group said today it wants the state to spend $100 million a year to staff schools with more police and counselors. They also asked for an additional $20 million a year to harden schools' security infrastructure. The plan also calls for mandatory reporting of threats and graduated penalties to help prevent violence. Our coverage continues over on WXYZ.com. There you can watch Chief James Craig's entire message, as well as how school districts are addressing these threats. Glenda?
Dave,